Hey Oddings, it's your Ate Sapphire. I have a very special offer for you from Care Of. So stick around after the first story if you want to hear how you can get 50% off your first order. Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary?
When Tanya sent this story to me, the power went out in her house. But that didn't surprise her. Whenever she tells people of this experience, strange things tend to happen. Hopefully nothing will while I share her story. 2 years ago, Lee, Tanya's now husband and then boyfriend, was a frequent house sitter for a very nice but slightly off family. They owned their own business and were out of town frequently for work. Their house was very minimalistic, aside from a few rather outlandish decorations, like a giant red ram statue and a set of antlers wrapped in rope. Before leaving the house to Lee, they would always remind him to never go in their son's room. One day when he was house sitting, he found a peculiar mask on the countertop. It was a white goat skeleton head with sharp teeth and an upside-down pentagram on its head. It made him feel uneasy, so he told Tanya about it that night, but she told him it was probably just a Halloween costume since it was October. Another time when Lee was house sitting, Tanya and their corgi joined him. Lee went to the gym, leaving Tanya and the dog to play in the house on their own. Tanya threw a ball, but it stopped midair and dropped suddenly. Tanya was stunned. She threw the ball again, and it stopped in the same spot. Her dog began growling and wouldn't stop until Lee came back home. A few nights later, while Tanya was sleeping alone in her apartment, she suddenly found herself inside that house. There was a man in a white suit, casually leaning against the wall. He was incredibly handsome, but frightening at the same time, a dark aura surrounding his charming and intoxicating smile. Tanya had never seen this man before, but knew exactly who he was. But how? How was she seeing something that she didn't even believe in?
I've been waiting for you. You're going to join me, aren't you?
No, never! He cocked his head back in laughter, and suddenly they were in her parents' bedroom. Tanya started screaming, trying anything to get her parents' attention.
They can't help you. No one can.
Now they were in front of her sleeping boyfriend. Tanya tried in vain again to get him to wake up, but he couldn't hear her. Then her cat slinked toward the man, hissing and baring its teeth. It was protecting her. Tanya woke up. She was back in her bedroom, gasping for air. She immediately called Lee to come over. Together, they drove to her parents' house because Tanya did not want to stay in her apartment. When her parents answered the door, Tanya's eyes widened. They were wearing the exact same clothes that they were wearing in her dream. She told them about what had just happened, and her parents exchanged a worried look. It was only a matter of time, her mom said. Everyone in our family at some point has had the same dream. It's the devil testing our faith, and he is now after you. You're the only agnostic in our family and the only non-confirmed Catholic, and he probably thinks you're an easy target. Tanya, don't let him in. The next day, they called a priest who blessed her apartment. And while Tanya hasn't had another visit from the man in the white suit since, she still feels like something evil is still following her. Her blanket would be yanked off of her while she slept at night, and her healthy corgi and cat had both died shortly after, of unknown causes. Tanya used to think her family was just trying to scare her with their stories about demons. And while this experience hasn't convinced her to be baptized, it definitely changed her.
Like I said at the beginning of the new year, one of my resolutions was making health a top priority, and a great way to do that is with today's sponsor, Care Of. It's an incredibly convenient way to take the vitamins and supplements you need. And if you're like me and aren't entirely sure what you need, Care Of has an incredibly easy online quiz that seriously only took me 5 minutes. And it asks you about your diet, health goals, and lifestyle choices, and then makes your scientifically backed recommendations. So for me, managing my stress and my sleep is really important to me, and Care Of recommended rhodiola for my stress and magnesium for my sleep. I have a very busy schedule, so having my daily supplements in individual and personalized packets like this shipped right to my door is a huge time saver. So your vitamins will come in a box like this filled with a month's supply of vitamins. Please it is. And using Care of not only does good for your body, but for others too, because a portion of every sale goes toward the Good Plus Foundation, which provides expectant mothers in need with valuable prenatal vitamins. Take advantage of this month's special New Year offer. For 50% off your first month of personalized Care of vitamins, go to takecareof.com and enter SCARY50.
When Orchid was 6 years old, her dad went on vacation to Minnesota to visit some relatives. When he returned, he brought back many gifts, among other things. Her family had a small chicken farm where they raised the birds for meals. Orchid was used to seeing her parents bring a chicken inside when it was time to eat. But the day her dad came back from his trip, there was a strange black bird on his arm. All of their chickens were white, so Orchid was puzzled. This bird looked like a crow. It was all black, including its beak, except its eyes were red. Her dad and the bird disappeared into the kitchen.
Mommy, what's that bird Daddy was carrying?
What are you talking about?
Daddy was holding a black bird.
Her mom went into the kitchen to see what she was talking about, but all she saw was her dad. There was no black bird in sight. That night, Orchid slept in her parents' bedroom. For whatever reason, she woke up in the middle of the night and sat up. She noticed something behind the curtains in front of the window. It was a girl who looked like she was about 12 years old. She was just standing there, staring at Orchid with her hollow black eyes. Orchid stared back at her, wondering what she was going to do. But she just stood there. Eventually, Orchid fell back asleep. The next morning, Orchid was drawing a picture. "What a pretty girl! Who is that?" her mom asked.
This is Princess.
Her mom thought nothing of her daughter's cute drawing until she started seeing it everywhere. Pages and pages of drawings of Princess all over the house. She was even on the walls and the bedroom pillows. "Orchid, you can't be drawing on everything."
But Princess is my friend. I like when she's around.
Her family was pretty disturbed by Orchid's sudden new obsession. But weeks later, her mother realized that there had to be a connection to Princess and the black bird. Orchid's family was practitioners of Hmong shamanism. Whenever you go on a trip, you must ask the spirits to not come back home with you, and Orchid's father had forgotten to do so. They suspected that Princess was a lost soul who attached herself to Orchid's father. They decided to perform uane, a shamanic ritual to heal those battling with a spirit. Because if Orchid continued to spend time with Princess, there was a good chance she could be dragged into the spirit world forever. Orchid was placed in front of the altar, and a shaman healer rang bells and chanted around her to enter the spirit realm. Once the shaman made the journey into the other world, he was able to interact and communicate with the spirit of Princess. After the ritual, the shaman healer asked Orchid, "Where is Princess now?" Orchid said nothing and started tearing up. "What's the matter?"
I don't want to talk about Princess.
"Why not?"
She said she can't play with me anymore because she's dead.
I will never eat pozole again. There's a church in my neighborhood that I've been going to every Sunday for the past year or so. And after every Mass, all of the members move next door to the hall where free lunch is served. Every week, it's the same delicious pozole, a traditional red stew with pork and vegetables. And it's all prepared and provided by Lupe Espinoza, a kind young woman. Lupe had been involved in the church long before I became a member. She was the most dedicated Catholic I had ever met. She ran the youth group and food drives and volunteered all over the city. After every Mass, she would give an individual greeting to every single person and memorized everybody's name. Everybody practically worshipped her, especially her husband, Eduardo. He was also involved in the community, but even he knew he wasn't as beloved as Lupe. Personally, I was always slightly creeped out by how intense they were. Lupe never broke eye contact with you when you were speaking, and Eduardo treated Lupe like she was a god. His wife seemed to be his proudest achievement. But they both did so much good in the community, it felt wrong to think ill of them, even though they both seemed a little off. One thing was for sure, their pozole was divine. One Sunday, I woke up late and forgot to eat breakfast before heading to Mass. My stomach was gurgling through the whole service, and it only got worse during the transubstantiation, which is when the priest turns the bread and wine into the body and blood of Jesus.
Take this, all of you, and drink from it. This is my blood.
In Catholicism, we believe that an actual transformation happens in that moment. That is actually Jesus' body and blood that we are about to consume. We believe that it brings us closer to God.
Do this in memory of me.
The second Mass was over, I rushed over to the hall to get in line for food. Maybe it was because I was extra hungry that day, but the pozole was even better than I remembered. I had always prided myself for my cooking skills, especially my own pozole recipe, but the Espinosas had me beat. I decided to ask Lupe about it. Your pozole is the best I've ever had. What's your secret? Lupe stared into my eyes, smiled, and delicately placed a hand on my shoulder. Just God's love. The following Sunday, I went to Mass as usual. But the Mass was not as usual. It was a memorial service for Lupe. During the week, the youth group went on one of those home building trips, like Habitat for Humanity, and a large metal crossbeam fell right on top of Lupe. It would have slammed right into 3 teenagers, but Lupe pushed them out of the way. After the service, everybody congregated in the hall. Once everybody had a bowl of soup in their hands, Eduardo addressed the crowd. Thank you all for coming. My wife loved all of you very much. Please, raise your bowls. Take this, all of you, and drink it. To Lupe. Everybody took a sip. We all took our seats and continued to eat the pozole. But it tasted a little different. Not worse, just different, which made me realize that Lupe was probably the better chef, not Eduardo. I was nearing the bottom of my bowl, so I picked it up and slurped the rest. All that was left was a small chunk of meat. I went to stab it with my fork, but it was surprisingly tough. I continued to stab it, and in doing so realized that it was a thumb. A goddamn human thumb with the bone still inside. I screamed and immediately started gagging. I threw the thumb onto the table. Everyone around me gasped in horror and disbelief. I turned to Eduardo and shouted, "What did you feed us?" He simply stared back, raised his hands and said, "She died for others. Do this in memory of her." You're insane. What the hell is wrong with you? Oh my God. Angry shouts echoed throughout the hall as people began vomiting everywhere. We held Eduardo in that room until the police came. I didn't do anything wrong. You should be grateful. We're all closer to God. Want more Something Scary? You can hear 4 more stories over on the Something Scary podcast, available for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. The links are in the description below. If you'd like to submit a story, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Like and share this video if it gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and turn on the bell for notifications. And if you dare, follow me on social media. Until next time, sweet dreams.